worked. But that was 1973, the season Rich Stadium opened, the season that Juice ran for 2003. And the very first game that year was in Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough, which was a piece of crap. And all you need to know is Rich Stadium cost $22 million at the time, which is laughable. And Schaefer Stadium cost $6 million, and it probably wasn't worth that. So anyway, here I am on the team playing, and the roster was small. The roster then was only 40. And get this, Lou Saban's staff was 6 assistant coaches. Now, John McDermott has over 20, as do most of the head coaches in the NFL these days. 6. So we're on the team playing. We get on one of the 2 buses, and just by coincidence, I was on the same bus with Juice. So we get off and we walk onto the field, and it was known that Schaefer Stadium had awful, brutally hard turf. So we all walked out to the middle field, and OJ reached in his pocket and pulled out a quarter, and he flipped it, and it hit the turf and bounced up almost to his hip. And he just looked at all of us and said, "Now that is some hard shit." So all he did was run for 250 that day, and that was an NFL record at the time. Bills won big, 31-13 or something like that. The fullback, Larry Watkins, ran for $138. And right then you realized Saban was not going to be doing any stuff with Dennis Shaw. He was on the bench, but Fergie played every game, and people don't realize 14-game schedule. Fergie only threw 162 passes that year, 162, barely 12 a game. And, but they made pretty good use of the running game. And so it was a very interesting introduction to how things would go. And OJ got to the 14th game, and it was snowing at Shea Stadium hard. And he needed to get 186 yards to break Jim Brown's record. And he just starts piling up yards and yards and yards. And all of a sudden, he's in the 4th quarter. And they run a short sweep, and he's got his 2003. They win the game. And afterward, it was interesting. This was so OJ. He brought the whole offensive line into the locker room where the interview area was. And he said, "I want you to meet some friends of mine." It was really very emblematic of the appreciation he had for that, for really a front 6, because Paul Seymour, the tight end, was actually a 3rd tackle. And it was very enlightening to me that he was such a team guy. And it's weird. The biggest paradox of my career covering the Bills was finding out there were 2 O.J. Simpsons. He was absolutely the most charismatic athlete I've ever met, unquestioned. And that year, he's on his way to 2,003 yards. So he was the story every single game. And I remember one home game, he was standing in his locker. And back then, this isn't when you're sitting in front of a logo backdrop with a microphone. You're around the locker. That was it. And he was talking to us, and he had a film crew in there that was doing a documentary on him, and he was giving instructions to the audio people and the visual people, talking to us and talking with his teammates. And he juggled all these things seamlessly. So I was amazed. You know, he's setting up dinner at the Cloisters, a restaurant that you might not be familiar with, but was very famous in Buffalo in the day. And it was a remarkable experience watching him do all of this. And nobody ever told him that his self wasn't a word, but he's pretty eloquent when he talked to us. But he would go talk to other players, other black players, especially the ones in what they call the ghetto, which is where the defensive backs were. And he'd go over there and talk street talk to them and then come back with a different voice in it. So he was a remarkable character. And if you had said to me, one of the things in this guy's persona is a double murder, I would have been totally incredulous. I mean, I would.